Quick intro for you. You're the CEO of Directive. Directive is on LinkedIn. It says 200 people. I know that often includes like freelancers, contractors, stuff like that. I don't know, 100 or 150 is more accurate. And you guys are a B2B marketing agency for large enterprise brands. You started the company in 2013. You now also recently launched Ape, which is a LinkedIn ads agency, and More Good Capital, which is your investment company where you buy or invest into agencies. I wasn't sure, or both. Both.
Yeah, both.
Very nice. Cool. Before we jump into, all the good stuff with LinkedIn ads, gift cards, I know you have a strong POV on that. If you would have to make the case, and I'm forcing you to why people should pay attention to what you have to say, and you can definitely brag a little bit here, what would those reasons be why your opinion is probably not just some random guess on things?
You got to take all advice with a grain of salt, mine or anybody else's. But, I've been doing this a long time for a lot of hours every day with a certain amount of intensity and commitment. So I bootstrapped us from Fiverr in 2013 into being, the largest software marketing agency in the world. And then we kind of expanded into B2B earlier this year, just so that we were able to help different types of organizations. We don't just help enterprise. We have a startup package that starts at $5K a month that really impactful on a lot of businesses and their organizations. So we're able to help companies of all different shapes and sizes. And frankly, we are just a very hardworking group that spends a lot of their own capital and the millions of dollars on their own marketing before applying it to the clients. So I think we have a certain soulfulness and commitment to why we believe what we believe.
You eat your own dog food.
Yeah, we do. And I think we've been trusted by a lot of people who are discerning marketers, understand the agency landscape. And I think the smartest marketers with the largest teams and the biggest budgets choose us for a reason.
Love it. I don't think you threw it out there, but is the public number 30 million you guys are doing, 20 million, 25 million, something like that in terms
of... Right around 25. Yeah, right around 25.
So, that's obviously very, very impressive. Cool. By the way, Julio, Alperin, Jamie, Prasad on Zoom, and then you guys in the LinkedIn live stream know I see you there. If you guys have questions at any point, drop them in the chat. I'll try to my best to monitor that and roll that into the conversation. Also, you guys here on Zoom, if you want to turn on your camera, that's always appreciated. So it makes us feel less lonely in here. All right. In my teaser, you put out a post, Garrett, a couple months ago, I think, that you guys generated 15 million in revenue from LinkedIn ads for yourself, for Directive. And I think it is mostly based on the gift card campaign. And I chatted with Tim Davidson before I had this call with you, who worked at Directive before, and asked him what I should ask you. And the first thing he said is ask him about gift cards, because Garrett has a strong opinion on how to use gift cards, what's the right amount, when should you offer it, to which persona. So maybe you can first talk a little bit about the campaign that you guys are running on LinkedIn and how it works. I don't know if you can do any screen share here or show anything. That would obviously be great, but I know that's often not possible. But walk people through a little bit this LinkedIn ads campaign that's working so well for you guys.
Yeah, and it doesn't just work for us. It works for Dropbox. It works for Stack Overflow. It works for Wiz. It works for the biggest brands in the world. So it works in cyber. It works in DevOps. It works in technical fields where I'm told it would never work. It works universally. Humans are motivated by money. It's not a unique concept. The Hare Krishnas, were doing this with flowers outside of airports back in the day. It's a simple psychological exchange of value. In other words, when we do marketing, everything we do is an exchange of value. So let's say you're asking in a form for someone's email and information. They're assuming that they are going to give you that in return for something that is valuable to them, whether that's insight into your service or a product or a solution. So in general, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to lower psychological friction. And then you zoom out of advertising as a whole, you have search, which has intent, but no firmographics. So if you think about B2B organizations, right, they're very ACV dependent, and they're very verticalized or niched in what makes someone a great fit for their brand or their product or their service. And so when you do search, the more you define the query to try to control. So let's say you run a ERP software, right? And they're like, look, board, CFO, CEO comes to me as the marketer and says, hey, we got to go up market. So what am I going to do on Google Ads? I'm going to take that ERP software query that's generating this volume, but is a victim of a bell curve, which is if 100 people search for ERP software, maybe 5 are enterprise, 5 are really small, and the rest are in the middle, right? It's just the nature of And so I'm going to put the query maybe enterprise ERP software. But now instead of 100 people searching, only 2 people are searching, and Google Ads is no longer driving bookings or pipeline. In other words, when I try to modify or control the query and move up market on Google Ads, I can't. Conversely, paid social, LinkedIn has this amazing firmographic audience where I know the right person at the right account. Me and sales together have an account list, and we're trying to, hold events for people. We're trying to use outbound email. We're trying to run LinkedIn ads, programmatic, maybe other things to them to drive awareness or affinity for the product and service we sell. But those people are not in market and have high CPMs. So now I've got this kind of expensive non-intent firmographic channel where I have this kind of affordable intent channel that I can't get anyone to fit my ICP in.
Yeah.
Enter the gift card. So what we're doing on LinkedIn, first and foremost, is we're trying to recreate the success of a sales development team. So I used to run SDRs at Directive, and we had a bunch of them. And you would do the playbook. You go to ZoomInfo, great client of ours in the past, and you would download, let's say, a list of companies you want to, advertise to. And what you want to do first, though, is understand your current clients. So ChatGPT has completely changed the game. So my background was economics, and I used to try to run like regression analysis and really old school educational software, and it would take forever. Well, what you can do now is you can take your current clients, enrich them in ZoomInfo, and then write a prompt to ChatGPT that says, take this data set and run a regression analysis to let me know what is most statistically significant in these dependent variables to clients who fit this criteria. Because you already know the account. So you would know that I have all of these clients and this is how much our current contract is worth. So you could make that the independent and say, okay, tell me what made them statistically significant to pay me $150,000, let's say.
So you're essentially trying to figure out the patterns of the accounts that pay the most, that have the highest LTV?
Yes, of publicly available information. So once I take those clients and I enrich them in ZoomInfo, and let's say for me, I might do ad spend. So I want to know, to build a reasoning model in ChatGPT, how to determine if someone's spending over $50,000 a month on LinkedIn, which I've built, by the way. That's proprietary, but like the same concept applies for any business. So maybe it's, ZoomInfo wants to know what makes someone likely to have a $500,000 contract with them. Is it sales headcount? Is it AE headcount? Is it SDR headcount? Is it technology integrations? Is it market cap? What is it? Is it series round? So I would take all that.
You train it on the data that you have,
yes. Well, the data I know to be true that you can't get publicly. So I would call that the confidential private data.
Yeah.
Right. And then I enrich that URL with all the public data. And I say, okay, what in the public data has a statistically significant T-stat to equal the private data that is unknown?
Yeah.
And so once I build that model, I then go identify every company in, let's say, B2B that has the criteria that my model has determined would make the private non-discoverable information statistically significant. And now essentially I'm doing ABM on steroids. So I'm doing what I call TAM-based advertising, using statistical modeling to determine ICP at scale.
How many customers do I need for this to work? Because I have 3 customers.
I'm doing it on 100, and I'm at statistical significance on 122 engagements. So, I mean, not much. Probably.
Is that the lower bound? Like, is 20 enough?
I haven't done it with someone who only has 20, so I'm not totally. I haven't tested that to answer you with like perfect confidence, but I know that if I have 100 accounts, I can do it.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay, so you now know which accounts have the highest likelihood of being good fits based on what you define being a good fit for you, which is high ad spend, let's say.
Yep.
Where does the gift card come in?
Well, now that I know, so it goes like I talk in a lot of theory because I'm not a media buyer. I'm a guy who tries to understand first principles of why things work, right? So once again, what's the first principle? First principle is if I knew exactly who would fit my terms and my ICP and my ACV, would I be aggressive in trying to acquire them? Yes. Yes, I would. Okay. So that's kind of step one.
Yeah.
So now I know who I want. And now I make sure that sales and marketing and everybody is going after the same audience. I upload that audience into Salesforce. So now I'm reporting back to the board and the C-suite on market share. So it's a strategic alignment between advertising and go-to-market strategy. These are the 10,000 accounts we want. When I did this for Directive, I held sales calls with 6,800 of those 10,000 accounts in 18 months. That's how I built
68%.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
With gift cards. So we were the pioneers of gift cards. This was early. There wasn't normal gift card for demo. That's what Directive pioneered. We kind of screwed up. So we were doing the marketing for Sendoso at the time and had a Sendoso contract. Sendoso didn't roll over their gift card credits. We didn't know the renewal was coming up on Friday, and we had to figure out how to spend like 16,000 in credits in 1 week. So we offered people a gift card for a meeting, and that's how this all came about. Okay.
Okay.
And so the theory of gift cards, if you zoom out of why we're using gift cards, is because we do not know intent. I do not trust Bombora's data. I do not trust third-party intent data that's based off of like essentially putting their tag on a bunch of media sites. And I think they convolute informational intent with commercial intent and then call it intent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I don't use that type of intent data. What I do is I try to manufacture intent. So if you build a model, and I've proven this out, it's actually cheaper to get someone to an intro call using a gift card than not. So I'm actually playing a different game. So I'm actually optimizing for activation, not acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you don't get the gift card unless you attend the intro call. The hardest part about LinkedIn ads is to create intent. And you can't confuse the gift card with the value prop. The gift card is the incentive. The value prop is what you do, who you do it for, and the outcomes you accomplish.
Yep.
That's the point of the message. But we use the gift card in the hook and in the call to action, the hook to get them to read the value prop and the call to action to get them from apathy to action. And then we evaluate not at the cost per lead, but at the cost per intro call held, cost per proposal, and cost per customer. And essentially are leveraging gift cards and monetary incentives to create intent on a non-intent channel. If you were to theorize what I'm doing.
How much should I offer in the gift card?
I haven't been able to get it to work for myself for less than 100, but I have. So I coach agency owners for a living. I've got 11 different guys I coach. I've got one guy running it, 2 marketers who's got it to work at $50. So obviously I'm always trying to lower my amount, right? But I haven't found that I could get my audience of kind of like directors and up. So I don't like to run gift cards to the manager title. I find that they take the meeting, but they haven't always defined the purchase process or intent or gotten enough buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to avoid managers unless I have a specific title. Like a demand gen manager works well for me. Maybe like a paid media manager, maybe like a digital marketing manager, but like a generic marketing manager or product or random kind of ancillary terms within that modified manager kind of section don't work well for us. And so I usually am going director and VP. That's where I see most all my success. And then C-level and manager tend to underperform.
Okay, so to get and to get more tactical, so you build your TAM, you know who your target accounts are based on not just firmographic data, but based on an analysis that you did of your currently existing best customers. You build that list, and then and those are conversation ads, right? So you're running conversation ads on LinkedIn, which are kind of like the new way of doing in-mails. I don't know if people are aware of what conversation ads are. They show up in your inbox on LinkedIn, and there's like a tagline, and then people click on it, and it kind of looks like an in-mail. That's where you run these, correct?
It's where I run some of it. Yeah, I'll also run on sponsored content as well. But yeah, conversation ads is the best ad unit in B2B today. It's essentially, imagine if you could. So the way I pioneered this was I put my like SDR team in a column in my Google sheet, and I did an LTV CAC analysis against my SDRs versus conversation ads. So conversation ads are like essentially scaling an SDR team without having to manage 23-year-olds and no headcount. And essentially each sender can be a VP or myself or a C-level exec. So it's like getting your CMO to send 3,000 messages a day to your exact ICP versus like a 23-year-old outbound SDR.
By the way, Fahad on LinkedIn on the live stream said, literally never heard a marketer use regression analysis. This is so cool. So there you go.
Yeah, it works. ChatGPT makes it super, super like efficient compared to like.
You need the O3 reasoning model, right? The one that thinks for like 10 minutes.
No, I think I'm just using O1. I wasn't even that tricky. I think I just used O1.
Okay, interesting. Now, we're running conversation ads, not with gift cards, and we're booking some demos. I talked with a head of marketing, this is early stage, to suggest for them to run them. His objection was, if we're running this through our CEO, what if we're sending a conversation ads to one of our people in the ecosystem? You could run an exclude list with existing customers, but there's obviously all kinds of other people, partners, people that just know you through the ecosystem. And he felt like he might burn his CEO's reputation by having like this ad conversation pop up on, 1 in 100 people who might already know him through an event and be like, why am I getting this ad from you?
Nah, that's just an ego problem. We're not that important in life.
Okay, fair enough.
Don't get your ego involved. None of us are that valuable or important. in reputations, I mean, you've got people doing horrible things in this world that are still serving and in positions of power. Your reputation isn't going to get burned because you were ambitiously hustling for your organization.
And
I
so
think in
you,
most cases, you'll actually probably improve your reputation by people wanting to know why their team isn't sending messages from them on their behalf.
right? Yeah, fair enough. Now you've been running this playbook for a long time. Have you seen that it got less effective? Do you have to constantly increase the amount of that you offer in the gift cards?
No, I served SaaS for so long and marketing just in general. There's so much turnover that there's always a new person and a new company. So a lot of, the best way to win new engagements as a marketing firm is kind of 120 to 90 days within someone starting in a new role. They don't have political buy-in. They're hired to create change, but the team that they've been absorbed or,
Inherited,
are
yeah.
now managing is the same team that the last leader failed with. So they're in this precarious conundrum where they need to create change, but the team might have technical gaps or work rate gaps, buy-in gaps, passion gaps, commitment gaps. So they're using outside vendors to create change before they've either rebuilt their own internal team or fully understood what needs to occur. So in general, I'd say that's kind of how it works. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then you run these conversation gift card ads towards a cold audience or just retargeting?
No, I've been running them cold the whole time, man. Just raw
Why
dog.
do they get so much hate then? If you're sitting here saying this is obvious, makes sense, everyone should do it, how come people are hating on it then? There's like this narrative on
It's just
LinkedIn
like
that,
no, it's they feel it's psychologically icky because it comes across as bribery. It's an ego thing. It's just like I believe my ethics are above this tactic and that it's a bad way to win business, and I'm not really a philosopher.
I think that's one. I think maybe that's the real reason and the justification, at least that I've seen, is that you're optimizing for the wrong thing because what you'll do is if you offer them $100 gift card is yes, they're going to take the meeting because they want to get the $100, but at no point were they're actually interested in your service or what you do. So you're just going to waste a bunch of money giving out money to people who are not in market to buy your thing. And if
No,
you,
yeah, I disagree. I disagree. I think the point of marketing is to create a sales moment. That's the point of marketing. So if I can create a sales moment better than anybody else, more efficiently, more often in an audience that they have a hard time unlocking at a target cost per, then it's the point of marketing. The real question is why isn't your product good enough to convince someone they should explore it? In other words, what you're really telling on yourself on is I don't want or I don't believe that my product is so compelling or differentiated or my pricing and packaging is so competitive that I don't believe that someone who was not in market could discover my product and it could create intent.
mm,
So I actually fundamentally disagree with the perspective that you're running an organization you don't believe in enough to cold pitch someone. Like why are you in business then? You're not competitive, you're not ambitious, you don't even believe in your own value proposition. To me, the point of marketing is to put my product or service in front of the right person at the right account. Remember, because if I'm going it off of a manually verified TAM of accounts that sales and marketing have both signed off on, that we believe these are the best people in the world for what we do,
yeah.
and you don't believe in it enough to want to get them to a sales meeting because you don't think it'll resonate, then you've got a product problem.
All right, let's I know that you mostly work with enterprise companies. Most of the people listening to this podcast are earlier stage, so they're
I
1
have
to 10
50
million.
startups that are sub 10 million in ARR
Okay.
currently.
So let's say you build your TAM. There's 10,000 accounts in there that you want to sell to, and now you want to run this playbook. You're gonna run cold LinkedIn conversation ads, offering let's say $110 gift card, something a little bit above $100. How much do I spend per month? How long do I keep it running? Inevitably, the concern, at least with the people that I talk to, will be burning money. And how long do we need to do this to verify that we're actually ROI positive? So how much ad spend for how long, sending out how many gift cards before I'm like, okay, no, this is, we need to turn this off.
Yeah, Jamie, my ACV is 125 when I did 15 million in bookings off this, just for context. So
There you
with
go.
professional services, it's a hell of a lot harder than anything in the world to sell. No offense to anybody, but trust me, it ain't easy to sell services. What I'll tell you is as long as it takes. So I'll give you my story. I want to go back to, once again, first principles. If you can't unlock LinkedIn, where the heck you going? You're gonna go unlock TikTok? You're gonna make Reddit work for you? You're gonna go Twitter? Where are you gonna go? Your audience is on LinkedIn. So getting LinkedIn to work to me is a non-negotiable for a B2B marketer in 2025, 2026, and 2027. To me, you don't like that's what you got. You got Google, you got LinkedIn, You have review sites. You can run programmatic and do these other stuff. It's great, but you're not going to create direct response intent for your pipeline in the short term on those channels. Okay. So you got Google, you got LinkedIn. First and foremost, you got to get it to work. If you can't get it to work, where else are you going to go? You're going to keep doing more events. I mean, it's a great strategy, but you can't do events every day, right? So in general, you do need to unlock digital. First principle, you have to figure it out. So for me, I just want to get all the principles right. So I have to unlock LinkedIn. And why do I want LinkedIn? Because I believe the right person from the right company who could buy my services is on LinkedIn. So can I validate that every impression that I'm delivering is to the right person at the right company who could buy my services or products, right? So now I know that to be true. So now the question becomes, why wouldn't you tell the right person at the right company about your brand and the value you create for them? Okay. So now it's less of a concept of anything else. And now it's how do I hit my cost pers? It's less of can I sustain it? So when I did this, it took 6 months to get one closed one account. And I was spending between $275,000 a month and $200,000 a month of my own capital on LinkedIn, burning it alive right in front of my eyes, trying to figure it out. Because why? Where else am I going to spend my money if I can't? I need to grow. I'm not going to donate my capital to the US government in the form of taxes. So I got to reinvest my EBITDA to create economic return. And so I'm all in on me. So I just sat there hours every day with my media team, testing different things to the right person at the right client. Now, from day one, it worked. So this is where people get a little tricky, which is they would book the meeting, but then we'd send it to an SDR. So now I have this very expensive lead who's not in market that I'm sending to a 23-year-old to explain why we're great in our methodology, right? So now I'm like, oh, that's not working. So we go get Chili Piper, who we were running all the marketing for. And now, okay, Chili Piper is going to route my lead gen gift card ads directly to AEs, not SDRs. Okay, now I have one AE who's moving them to Strat, 3 that aren't. Okay, why is that occurring? So now I go build a deck so that all the AEs have to use the deck, so I can try to normalize AE performance by using a deck so that all their talk tracks have the same flow. Then from there, I started taking the intro calls, and we developed a psychological principle, which is we would start the call like this. Hey, Jamie. Hey, Martin. Hey, David. Hey, Tobias. You're obviously successful. You've accomplished a lot in your life. You don't need $100. What made you feel like this was such an important moment that you had to take time out of your day to hear about our business? And now they have a psychological decision. Do they admit they're cheap and they're here to waste my time? Or do they have to change their perspective and listen to what I'm saying? Well, humans don't ever want to come across as manipulative or cheap. So now they have to actually tell themselves they're interested. They listen well enough, and we started to monetize it. And so in other words, it really came down to sales process and coaching, and the marketing works from day one. We just had to change who we sent the leads to, how they had their conversations, how they qualified people, what resources they used. And from there, we were able to figure it out and crack the code. But it took 6 months, and I just wasted probably over $1 million just every day trying to figure it out.
Is that what you would also tell a company trying to do that they need to be willing to do that? Or
yeah, anything in life. Anything. You want to improve your product, that's how you do it. You want to build your sales org, that's how you do it. You go all in on something you believe. You keep yourself highly present. You go work your ass off, and you eventually figure it out. That's how it goes in life. There's no magic bullet. It's not like you can just go launch some new thing and it works. Nothing in marketing ever works. You just have to be willing to lose more money and try harder than everybody else until you figure it out. And then everybody's like, how'd you do it? It's like, well, I didn't give up.
What were the other things that you needed to fix besides sending it to an AE, that kind of first sentence that is that psychological switch? Anything else that you had to fix?
Yeah, like just a lot of conditional logic on required fields in Salesforce. So you couldn't move something from one stage to the next unless you put information in. So it's all about learning, right? So you had Gong, so I could watch all the different ways the different reps are doing the calls. So I could start to see, okay, this rep. So when people do life cycle stage analysis, I've noticed they don't do it by rep. They just do it by channel. So they'll say 35% of our LinkedIn leads go from hand raiser to intro call held. But they never then go another layer deeper and say, okay, I'm going to put all my reps on a life cycle stage analysis. So what I started to find is I would build leaderboards with all my reps, and I could see which people were able to figure out how to get people to a strat call or to a proposal. And then I would watch their Gong calls, and I would standardize their approach back to the other reps. So once again, it's just about working hard. You got to be present, you got to try, you got to be creative, and you can't give up.
If the average person who is listening to this will now tomorrow go out and implement this, so they'll set up a conversation ad, build their TAM, incentivize them with $100 gift card, they'll use that
Yeah.
sentence that you just told us.
Yeah.
What are the things they'll probably get wrong?
Their copy will suck. I mean, universally, people are bad at writing. So I think they do a poor job writing copy, to be completely honest. I think it's a lost art. And I think people in general, a conversation ad is it's a copywriter's dream. And I love to write. And so I worked with people like Tim Davidson, by the way, is a really great copywriter.
Yep.
And like, Tim will tell you, but like people won't know. It's like Tim and I spent hours together for years working on LinkedIn ads every day. Like we would talk on the phone every day, try new campaigns. And Tim would tell me, no, like my idea was stupid, which is great. That's what you want out of a media buyer, right? And he would push back and, like I would try to get him to do something. He would tell me why I'm wrong. I would tell him just to do it anyway. And then sometimes I'd be right, sometimes I'd be wrong. And we would just, try to figure it out together. Both, big egos, both thought they knew the best. And you just kind of keep deferring to each other. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. But I think you got to write it conversationally. So just, like we had one copy that did the best for us, and we used what we called charm timing and then charm pricing. So I would go with something like, hey, Nicholas, 29 minutes, $105 gift card, and you'll learn exactly how we unlock growth for Wiz. And that would be the hook. And then I would talk about, I run marketing at Directive. We help, B2B SaaS organizations like yourself with paid media, content marketing, RevOps, and creative. If you're interested, we'd love to take, 29 minutes of your time, $105 gift card, and you'll walk away with the worst case 3 tactics you could deploy tomorrow. Interested? And then we would essentially put them into a Chili Piper flow. And then we would build essentially no-show cadences and workflows for people who didn't show up. We'd ask for phone numbers so we could text them. You're just trying to increase your activation rate.
Okay. Now maybe you can roast my copy because you say most people write shit copies. So here's my conversation ads.
Yeah, way too small. Way too small. Way too small.
Way too small. Also, you mean the browser?
Yeah. No, way too like not enough information, like and then like your engagement thing, I would do something like, hey Garrett, and then I would just not have another line right there. So like I noticed you've been engaging with Project 33 as like a weak hook. So you would want to go with something a lot more powerful around what your promise is. Something like, let's say if you do the founder-led outbound system, you could talk about, have you like, I would take like 3 super famous founders you support. Like what do X, Y, and Z all have in common? They all hired P33. Before they brought us on, this is what their life was like. Now they're able to do this. 20 minutes of your time, AirPods on me, and I'd love to walk you through exactly what we've accomplished.
Fair. Okay. So you'll
something like that where you're just more creative and articulating your value, like, because you helped technical SaaS founders create LinkedIn thought leadership content, but without you, right? So founders before P33 post once a month. After, they're posting 15 times a month. Average founder gets over 3 million impressions in the first 6 months with us, resulting in 18 demos. I would get more outcome oriented
type. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Outcome based. Fair.
And really focus on the hook.
Anything on subject line? My subject line is you'll probably not.
Yeah, get rid of it. Yeah, get rid of the subject line. The number one thing you can do to improve performance is not have a subject line. So watch what happens. Delete the subject line, and it pulls their name into the freaking subject line. Check that out. So go up. See now how they can already pre-read the email and sell themselves on you.
Next step: create, shipped. All right, there we go.
Yeah, so that'll improve performance, and then you just want to work on spacing, like the we. I guess touching the period. So deep attention to detail on everything.
There you go. All right. Anything else people would get wrong besides the copy? Bad hook?
Their bids are too low. So like conversation ads are a throttled ad unit. So humans can only receive so many of them. And I think people misunderstand competition on social compared to Google ads. So on Google ads, you're competing with people who are advertising for the same search term. On LinkedIn, you're competing with anyone in the world who's selling that ICP. Mm-hmm. So American Express could be advertising to a CEO just as much as a marketing firm, just as much as a finance solution, just as much as anything else. So if you look at recommended bids on conversation ads, they'll do like 33 cents to 65 cents. And I think we bid 115 just so we get to the top of the auction. So in general, you're wanting to overbid to get delivery because the CPL is still half that of sponsored content. Sometimes it's even like times lower again.
So I have automated bid. If I change that to 125, how much will that impact the performance?
You'll just go to like the top of the auction. It won't actually be that expensive, but you can run a test and just see how it goes for you.
Okay.
Anything I'm not else? A media buyer, so now you're going to get a little bit out of my expertise. Like I don't do the bids. So I do the copy, the creative, the targeting, the why, the what. I don't do the how. I'm not the best at how.
When it comes to offer any, let's say, because the way that I see it is the way that your ad's going to perform is mostly based on what you're going to offer. I guess the offer here is just a gift card, right? You're not going to talk much about what your
No, that's the
actual
incentive. See, the offer is
is
your
what.
value prop. It's the promise your brand makes to people.
Okay.
One thing I've seen that's working really well right now is you take something that you uniquely do in like the project phase and you pull that forward and you could test that instead of the gift card. So let's say if every new engagement for Finn gets a full content calendar and all this other stuff, let's say. So Finn would promise a full content calendar free of charge for all new clients. But you are already going to deliver that if they're a client. So you can take the most like highest perceived value deliverable in your service or in your product that's already included and then give it away for free to new clients once again. See what I'm saying? So it's just a positioning exercise and a framing exercise. So it's a very clever way of doing this. Like for me, I will build you a free manually verified TAM for all new engagements. But I also do manual verified TAMs for all new engagements.
Right. Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So like
Yes.
I buy the ZoomInfo credits, I do it all for them already. So I would take something where maybe I have a lost leadership in my deliverable where it's something I do for people as part of my differentiation and I'll bring that in free of charge.
Yep.
To
So
the offer.
is getting this conversation ad the 80-20 of LinkedIn ads? Or I mean, you guys with Ape, you guys run a LinkedIn ad agency. What are the other things you'd be looking at for people who are starting up their LinkedIn ad account or they're running ads, but they're not getting results?
You know, you want to balance sponsored content with the conversation ads in my mind, primarily because it just depends on your brand awareness, you know. So like Abe doesn't have huge brand awareness, so I want to make sure they've heard of Abe before they get the offer. So I'm trying to pair that same TAM with sponsored content in their feed. So they're starting to get this exposure to the brand, the logo, the value prop, what we do and who we do it for. And then I'm running conversation ads and I am building retargeting audiences as well, just not at the click level, at the impression level or the engagement level, so that essentially I can lower my cost pers and hopefully have like increasing marginal returns. In auction-based advertising, there's always diminishing marginal returns on your CPMs because every time a new competitor enters, and it could be anyone, not your competitor set, but anyone advertising to that title at that company for any service or any product, you have diminishing marginal returns. CPMs are always going up on LinkedIn. I think my conversation ad cost percent is up 9x over the last 3 years, for example. So you have to constantly be trying to build your retargeting audience to get a lower cost per against that cold audience. But I'm not just doing direct response via retargeting. I am running direct response to cold all day, every day.
But then you're also doing the same conversation ads to your retargeting.
Yeah, or a different offer. I could test a different offer or a different value prop. But the idea is you're using retargeting to try to fight against the increase in CPMs and auction-based advertising.
Yeah. One other thing that Tim Davidson said I need to ask you about, and this plays, I think, into this copy thing, is that the importance of being different, not better. Can you expand on that?
It's like if you're dating someone and you try to tell them how much better you are at something than someone else, they don't really ever believe you. It's the same thing with business. You're never really better than anyone in other people's minds. They don't totally believe that when you say it. They believe that through experience, but this isn't sports. So it's hard to get a public display of your betterness. You know, they can't look up your stats. You know, it's not this like third-party governing body called the National Basketball Association that shows your points per game and your plus minus. Yeah. It's just your, crappy 300% case study without any absolutes. And so in other words, it's very hard to convince humans that you're better, right? If you're a software company, okay, you have a 99.9% SLA on uptime. What are you going to you see what I'm saying? Like, how do you convince someone you're better? What you really need to convince them of is that you're different. And by convincing people you're different, you get elasticity on price. In other words, if everybody else is selling apples, I want to be the one guy selling an orange. Because now I get to define the price and value of the orange, and I'm not competing against all of the apples. And so once again, I'm using essentially differentiation to create elasticity on price to then hopefully create incremental improvement on my margins.
How do you find out what that difference should be?
You just take the most widely accepted thing that you gutturally think is stupid and you just make it the big ass enemy. So like for me, MQLs, so what I did is I built a methodology called customer generation, and the tagline was delivering on the promise demand gen forgot about. So I made demand generation the enemy, customer generation the solution, and I talked about why MQLs don't move the needle, customers do. I talked about why leads are a vanity metric, SQLs are not. So I just make whatever's widely accepted that I believe is fundamentally wrong in the craft that I'm passionate about the enemy, and make myself the solution.
Do you now need to adjust it? I feel like there's a lot more acceptance of that message now. People like Chris Walker have also done a lot to kind of evangelize that idea? Do you now need to find something else?
Probably. I don't have it yet. I mean, I'm not a magician. So I also can't fake it, like, so everything I do has to be authentic or else it won't resonate. Like the way you market to marketers is by making them jealous. You're trying to evoke the emotion of jealousy. And so if I am marketing to a marketer and they consume my experience or my ads or my POV and they're like, shit, that's good, or like, that's different. I want, like, I like that perspective. I resonate. I'm doing my job. But if I do marketing that's average or just okay, marketers, like, I won't be able to monetize it. So like the marketing has to be different and special, or else like it struggles to, like, with who I market to as marketers.
Totally.
So, and it has to be authentic. So if I don't have anything, I don't have anything. I just got to keep, it probably means I'm not close enough to my own marketing. So most of your inspiration comes through exposure and experience.
Yeah, I'm just thinking through because I feel like there's a lot of SaaS companies who just repeat the same messages as all their competitors, as you say. It's everyone's saying they're better or the best or better in some way, and I think a lot of them struggle to genuinely find the place where they could say, here's where we're unique, here's where we're different, here's our point of view that is differentiated.
But yeah,
and
you have to differentiate your point of view, not feature. So that's where, like, this is my point. Like, you have to have a different view around how your persona should accomplish a task or a job or a role. And that makes you, like, avoid feature parity, because essentially you can keep going deeper. So what I like to explain to people is the depth of your strategy is more important than the breadth of your activity. So like a lot of people do a lot of things and then they think that's valuable. But really what's valuable is going deeper on one thing to the point where other people believe you're actually different. So in other words, like, any software company can copy anyone else's feature, and now they can do it at a lower cost and faster with AI. But what they can't emulate is the point of view of your product and what your product believes. And so a feature is a microcosm of, like, a point of view, and you can go much deeper within a feature set if you have a strong belief around something.
By the way, Jamie said, just found my next tattoo, better subjective, different is absolute. There you go, Jamie. We'll expect next week to see that tattoo on your arm. I guess I'm trying to get it, if there's an exercise that people can go through to discover that, because I know a lot of founders who don't have that differentiated point of view. And I'm sure if they would think about it or do some certain exercises, they would figure out that there are
let me give you an example. Yes. Let me give you an example, right? So you got Dream Data and you got Hockey Stack, right? Both all, and let's say Visible back in the day, right? So all three offer attribution. Which ones hired a group of statisticians and scientists from a top university to develop their own weighted model for attribution according to their belief systems around how an organization should go to market? Oh, you haven't? Well, then you don't have anything. You got my point? So if you're competing on attribution and you're doing on first touch, last touch, at position based, time decay, whatever your model is, but you haven't done the work to develop your own POV around what you believe and why you believe it, and involve other third-party experts in defining it, you can essentially say why first touch is bad, why last touch is bad, why position based is bad, and you make the status quo the enemy. And then your differentiation is due to the work and belief system you have around how an organization should go to market. And then you brand, name, educate, announce, promote that work, and now you become great.
Found that outbound. Why did you spin out a LinkedIn ads agency even though Directive was already running LinkedIn ads for your clients?
Yeah, so I mean, LinkedIn, like, I think Directive is probably, it's hard for the reps, like the reps won't tell me exactly, but I've managed about $100 million in ad spend on LinkedIn in the last 5 years. I think that makes us the second largest independently held advertiser on LinkedIn. But when you run a platform, it's the same problem every software company has, right? So the reason software struggles right now is they have this point solution, this amazing product they build that everyone wants. And then they have to raise around to keep growing. When you raise around, what they do is they don't deepen the product roadmap, they expand the product roadmap, essentially like changing the value prop and who they serve. So they essentially go from being a product to a platform. Now, the problem with once you're a platform is you go from being one thing to a new thing. And a lot of times these software companies burn the bridge before they walk across it. So I'll give you an example of one. So outreach. So like Directive has ran the marketing for Gong for the last 3 years. And then outreach we worked with as well. Now, outreach was this awesome outbound sales development software. That was what they were, SDR software. But then they start to see, okay, what if we acquired Chorus or a listening software? What if we added forecasting and we started competing with Insight Squared and Clarity? And they start to essentially expand their feature set to become a sales platform. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Well, when they did that, they deleted all their SDR language and all their outbound language. And so they essentially expanded before they walked across the bridge. Now, the reason this is so important is with Directive, if I isolate any one of my features and it becomes the narrative of my brand story, my 5 other P&Ls struggle. And for as much as I believe in LinkedIn, 75% of spend is still on Google. And so for me to overemphasize LinkedIn, I actually end up losing RFPs and losing pitches because people think all I do is LinkedIn, when I really actually have RevOps, creative, organic, content, Google Ads, programmatic, ABM. And so I didn't feel that for as great as Directive is at LinkedIn, I really do believe we're the best LinkedIn ad shop in the market. For me to say that would actually dilute my positioning. So I still run it at Directive, but I built a brand called Abe where I can yell from the rooftop, create content around LinkedIn, do ads around LinkedIn, and I can use singularity. So right now, my Abe ads actually have a higher response rate than my Directive ones because I'm not pitching a platform, I'm pitching a point solution. So I have better cost per performance and more brand clarity around what we do, who we do it for, and why we do it, because it's singular in nature.
Priya says April Dunford's positioning strategy is entirely based on how to find your differentiation. Jamie said, I'm stunned how many times the portfolio expansion approach fails versus deepening, verticalizing, and it's still the predominant model for VCs.
And that's what we're doing at More Good Capital, right? So Directive is the B2B platform, and then we'll be expanding into an e-commerce platform. And so it'll be verticalized service businesses so that I don't lose essentially clear differentiation, right? So like Directive is becoming tech enabled and I'm building my own LTV CAC model software, scenario planning software, right? So CMO, let's say, gets $500,000 from the CFO and says, hey, where would you allocate it and why? And what would be the economic impact on our forecast? And I'll be able to help them run 3 different scenario models that plots out impact based off of, okay, well, if we improved intro call held, distract call held rate or disco, what would happen? If we lowered cost pers, what would happen? If we reallocated capital from LinkedIn to Google ads, what would happen? And so I'm building all these modeling environments. I used to run these all on Google Sheets for people, but essentially verticalizing allows you to then have a tech that is unique to B2B, tech that's unique to e-commerce and maybe runs off the Shopify API, tech that's unique to healthcare or whatever that is. So in other words, you're kind of verticalizing yourself to once again deepen your differentiation and create a pull function where like your ICP goes, finally, a solution built for me, right? That's what you're trying to do.
Now, you're also very active on LinkedIn. Through your LinkedIn profile, you post a lot of content. Why does the CEO of a 200 people company who is running a 20 million plus company, and you've figured out ads, why are you posting on LinkedIn? What's your
I don't
reasoning?
want some like 23-year-old on TikTok kick my ass next year. You know, like they'll have a lower CAC. They don't have to spend as much on ads. They can invest more capital in M&A. I mean, in general, I just don't think you can be competitive. Like, I'm not a big social media guy. Like, to be honest with you, like I only started posting on LinkedIn in July. I've always struggled with like, you know, who cares? You know, like I'm not any different than anybody else. I don't even really enjoy it that much all the time. I just would never want to think I could have done more to be successful. And to me, not promoting the brands I love and believe in and the companies I'm obsessed with would be like doing myself a disservice, and I think would make me less competitive. I think that there's a 23-year-old, 24-year-old version of me right now who's building an agency with tech-enabled services on AI that can outperform me on a cost of goods sold level, who has a massive following on social and doesn't have to advertise and has a lower CAC than me, and frankly, a more competitive agency than I do, and I would hate to lose. So I'm trying to compete. That's why I'm doing it.
Is there anything, what's your time horizon when you think about this? Like, is this like I'm starting, or you started in July or whatever you said, so you're doing it for over 6 months now. Is this I'm going to do it for the next 18 months so that in 18 months, maybe I have a base that will contribute something, or do you already see it having a meaningful impact on Directive right now?
No, it's totally changed my life, actually. Yeah, no, like being consistent. But here's the thing, like I've done a lot of content in the last 12 years of running this organization, but I mean, I used to joke that I've done more content to fewer people than anyone in the world. So I mean, like, I'm not like great at this. Like, I'm not like actually like an influencer or very good at it. What happened is, I remember there's a guy named Larry Kim. I don't know if anyone here remembers Larry Kim, but he used to run a company called WordStream. And he was a really prolific content creator, like 10 years ago when it was more blog related. You know, you write a lot of blogs. Yeah, I think he has Mobile Monkey now. I don't know if that was ever successful, but he did very well with WordStream. And he would create a lot of content. And I remember I walked up to him at a conference. And I was like, Larry, how do you do it? How are you so productive? How do you always create so much content? And I remember he looked me right in the eyes and he said, well, I just write every day. And he's like, you probably just don't write enough. And he was totally right. There's no secrets. There's no tricks. So since July, I've been spending almost an hour every night. So I got 3 kids under 5. I work about 10, 12 hours a day already. And then I go write for an hour every night. That's the only way it's worked for me. And I actually sit down. I actually really put the work in. I actually really formulate the thoughts. And then I have an editor who will edit the content after I'm done writing. And that's it. I don't, there's no gimmicks, there's no tricks. I don't have a ghostwriter. I just sit down and I put an hour in of real work and I write it. It's just like everything else in life. If you either like, there's no shortcuts. I tried to do half-assed content and I got half-assed results. And I did that for 12 years. Now creating content on LinkedIn creates a lot of economic opportunity for myself and my organizations because I'm really trying. Like I'm authentically trying to help people and I'm authentically trying to create information and I'm not letting my ego get in the way. And I'm trying to write good hooks and play the game a little bit and like make sure that people actually get to my value so that if I'm going to put all this effort into a post, they actually read it. It's just trying to stay humble and work hard, man. Like I don't have any magic tricks to be honest with you.
What's the benefit you're seeing? Because one thing I noticed about your content is it seems to be more tailored. Like you share a lot of lessons of building directive, like agency lessons. So they feel very applicative to me as I'm running a small agency and I feel like you're 3 steps ahead of me. But it feels less to the, I don't know, director of demand gen at a large enterprise company. Feels more tailored toward the agency owner.
Yeah. That's my life. I can't write about things that I'm not doing all day, so I run a pretty big company and I'm busy running that. So when I get exposure to the marketing stuff, maybe I'm in a client moment or I'm running my own marketing, I will talk about marketing, but I just can't talk about something I don't authentically believe in or know or experience. I don't want to have fake content. I don't get any views anyway. It sounds like I'm talking about something. I call it like 10,000-foot content. You gotta write from experience or else it doesn't resonate and you don't really add incremental insights. So I have to, man. I try to write more about marketing. I want to write more about marketing, but I don't. I spend most of my time running a large organization, so most of my inspiration and things I'm passionate about related to that. But that drives my M&A pipeline. So right now a big priority for me is to grow through acquisition. And so I have a lot of agency owners who either, do my coaching or want to be acquired. And so for me, I run that. I also think software marketers in-house are kind of just like everyone else. That one day think about maybe they'll run their own agency, do their own consulting. So I think the software marketers still resonate with the content. Look at the amount of fractional people there are right now, for example. So I think that there's something there. But yeah, man, I only can write about what I really authentically know and believe. And, if I don't have inspiration or exposure, I'm not going to write on it.
Love it. All right, we got 2 minutes left, Garrett. Anything that you wish everyone here knows or learns about, or anything you would point people to? If any one of you guys can squeeze in a question, feel free to try. I know I monopolized the conversation here a little bit, but yeah, Garrett, any last thoughts? Anything you wish everyone does, knows, actions?
There's not unlimited channels in marketing, So I would encourage you to just go a lot deeper. I think right now the biggest problem I see in my own marketing team and the marketing teams I serve is we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We say LinkedIn doesn't work. We say events don't work. We say Google doesn't work. Well, if Google events and LinkedIn don't work, you might as well shut down your shop. How are you going to tell anybody about nothing? And so my point being here is like, stay deeper in the stuff and like, there's no statues for 10,000-foot CEOs. There's nobody needs more, macro leaders. That's not what any company needs. That's not what any organization needs. That's not what any direct report needs. Do less one-on-ones, schedule more initiative-based meetings, and get close to your strategy. Create a strategy and then create weekly meetings around implementing the strategy and keep your energy and your effort close to the work, close to the team, and focused on initiatives that are going to drive big economic impact. But don't just take people's advice. Don't just stay above things. Go get in the weeds. That's where you're going to turn into, the best version of yourself.
There you go. Garrett, thank you for joining. Nicholas, Jamie, Alperin, Martin, David, Toby, Fahad, Minak, Priya, Julio, thank you guys for joining. And then also on the live stream, I saw Noah, I saw Fahad. Thank you guys for joining. That's it. Garrett, appreciate your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.